Whenever you talk about Pokemon or collectibles as an investment, people often like to compare them to Beanie Babies and how those crashed and burnt back in the 90s. My name is Jack, you're watching JBTCG, and today we're going to talk about the crash of Beanie Babies, why it happened, and what's the difference between them and Pokemon. And we're also going to go over Labubus at the end because they're hot right now, and I want to compare them to Beanie Babies and Pokemon as well. So Beanie Babies first hit the shelves in the early to mid 1990s and saw huge success. If you managed to get your hands on one for retail, it would cost a mere $5, but they regularly sold for 10 times that amount. And some of the more rare and exclusive Beanie Babies even reached into the thousands. To many people, it seemed like an infinite money glitch. And like most trendy collectibles, there was a craze of people trying to invest in them or buy and resell them on the secondary market. However, the issue with these is that the majority of people that were buying these Beanie Babies were doing so to make money, either flipping or investing in them. Almost all the Beanie Babies were hoarded and kept in pristine condition with their tags intact. None of them were really played with. Then when the trend died down and the collectors and investors or flippers, whoever was holding Beanie Babies, tried to sell them on the secondary market, but the collector demand just wasn't there anymore. This left tons of people burnt and left with hundreds of Beanie Babies that they couldn't even pay people to buy. This is why in every collectible market there needs to be a balance between collectors, businesses, and investors. Now you may hear this story and think, that sounds a lot like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering. A lot of people are in these hobbies to resell and make money. There's a lot of scammers, there's flippers, there's investors. So what's the real difference and why has Pokemon performed extremely well over the past 30 years while Beanie Babies just died? To first answer this question, let's look at what Beanie Babies are. They're stuffed animals that are a couple inches tall, filled with beans, and they have a bright red TY tag on their ear. And when you compare one Beanie Baby to another, or even other stuffed animals, they don't really stand out in any significant way. They weren't receiving their incredibly high price tags because of their quality. They're $5 stuffed animals at the end of the day. The only thing really driving price in the Beanie Baby market was exclusivity. With Pokemon, one of the main things that drives demand is also exclusivity and uniqueness. But emotional attachment and nostalgia to the Pokemon that you played the games with as a kid also drives prices. And in addition to this, Pokemon cards also come with beautiful artwork. When you buy a $250 Lugia card and you hold it in your hand and you feel the texturing and the detail, it feels premium. With a Beanie Baby, there really is no premium quality feel. Another issue with Beanie Babies is that people had a very limited emotional attachment to them. No one was playing with these or interacting with these as a child because they were purely seen as dollar signs. This balance on the scales of collectors versus investors and flippers was completely out of whack. The company that produced Beanie Babies even made booklets telling you how much your Beanie Baby investments would be worth over time. And obviously there are websites that track Pokemon card and sealed product prices, but they don't come from the official Pokemon company. The emotional attachment that people have to the Pokemon that they grew up playing with or a Pokemon that they pulled out of a pack when they were much younger is very, very strong, and it stays with them for life.
Can I read?
Millions of kids every single year play their first Pokemon game. They build teams of Pokemon and fight alongside them for hours and hours on end, either consciously or subconsciously making a connection to that Pokemon. For me, since I grew up playing Pokemon Platinum, the three Pokemon that I like the most are Luxray, Garchomp, and Giratina. I spent hours grinding levels with all these Pokemon and battling in the battle towers, and because of that, to this day, they're still my favorite Pokemon. So these millions of kids nowadays are growing up playing these games. They're collecting booster packs online in the TCG Pocket. They're playing Pokemon Go, and they're opening the actual booster packs as well from the Pokemon card game. Although you have to pay for physical cards, there are tons of ways to interact with Pokemon, collect Pokemon, and build emotional and nostalgic connections to your favorite Pokemon. With Beanie Babies, the only real way that people interacted with them was buying them and selling them. This is one of the main reasons why Pokemon continues to succeed while many other card games and collectible investments fail. Pokemon has been able to successfully bridge the gap between multiple generations of people. At card shows or at your local card store, it's very frequent to see a dad and a son collecting Pokemon together. This strengthens the collector base for Pokemon and ensures that it will live on in the future. This is what allows Pokemon to remain so strong through changing times, while many other collectibles die with the generation that made them popular. Finally, the last thing that has allowed every single Pokemon booster box to increase in value over time is that so many people open them. When you open and remove the shrink wrap on a sealed Pokemon box, there's no going back. Now there is the issue of resealing, but this is rare and usually easily detectable by an experienced person in the hobby. But regardless, tens of thousands of Pokemon packs are opened daily, with everyone going after their favorite chase cards. The odds of pulling a top tier chase card are held very low in order to keep people opening and essentially gambling to get that one pack that makes it worth it. And this is what leads to tremendous scarcity of sealed Pokemon products over time. When you look up sealed booster boxes for sets that are even 4 to 5 years old, you only see that there's a couple listings on marketplaces like eBay and TCG Player. Now when you compare this to Beanie Babies, which are 20 to 30 years old at this point, there are still a ton of them out there. This is because the supply of Beanie Babies can't decrease in the same way that a sealed Pokemon booster box can. And now people have been saying that recently everyone hopped on the sealed Pokemon investing and collecting train, and because of this, Pokemon booster boxes and sealed products won't go up in value because everyone's doing it. But in reality, the portion of Pokemon fans that are actually holding sealed products as an investment or even collecting sealed products is very, very small. And to illustrate my argument, let's look at prismatic evolutions. The odds of getting a special illustration rare from a pack are around 1 in 70. Then, if you manage to pull one, there are 32 different special illustration rares in this set, so your odds of pulling a specific one are around 1 in 2,240 packs. Now there are also God packs which you can pull special illustration rares from, but these are incredibly rare. To take this into account and for the sake of an even number, let's say your odds of pulling a specific special illustration rare, like the Umbreon for example, is 1 in 2,000 packs. Now let's look at how many of these Umbreons have been graded with PSA so far. According to PSA's pop report, around 5,200 copies. And based off our estimated pull rates for this being 1 in 2,000 packs, and there being 5,000 copies, we would estimate that at a minimum, 10 million packs of Prismatic Evolutions have already been opened. And this isn't even taking into account the number of these Umbreon cards that either haven't been graded, are sitting in PSA's waiting room or in their warehouses waiting to get graded, or were even graded with a different company. So in reality, the number of packs that have been opened is probably closer to 20 million than it is to 10. But either way, the set that is being hoarded by scalpers and investors has over 10 million packs opened in the span of 6 months. All of this is just to illustrate and explain how Pokemon sealed products over time can get incredibly scarce because there's such a draw to open them. With sealed Pokemon products, the demand for a set can decrease over time, but the box can still increase in price because the supply continues to drop and it drops at a higher rate. With Beanie Babies, the supply never really dropped. They're just stuffed animals and they're easy to keep in good condition. The only way a Beanie Baby could increase in price is if the overall demand for that specific Beanie Baby or Beanie Babies in general increased. And because of all these factors, beautiful art, a connection between collector and the actual Pokemon, and the world's love for opening Pokemon packs, sealed Pokemon products continue to increase in value over time, while other collectibles fall off. Now the newest craze in the collecting space is Labubus, which feels kind of corny to say, but these are blind boxes for little creatures that remind me of the monsters from Where the Wild Things Are, and their current hype was sparked by Lisa from Blackpink, who I'm not really familiar with, but because she's an international star, after she mentioned them, they exploded in value. And from what I've gathered, the only real difference between these and Beanie Babies or Squishmallows, I'm not letting y'all forget Squishmallows. I know some of you were out there fighting tooth and nail to get those at Target. But either way, the only real difference I've noticed with these is that they come in blind boxes, so you don't actually know what you're gonna get. So do I think that these will hold up long term? No, not really. I don't think they will. Historically, stuffed animal type collectibles like these just haven't held up long term. Now, maybe some of the sealed boxes from the first wave of releases will hold a premium or be desired long term, just because they're iconic and they have the same sealed mechanic that Pokemon has, where once you open it, you can't really go back. As we see with most of these plushy bubbles like Squishmallows, Beanie Babies, they just seem to die off over time. Now, through all these hype phases and trends, the one thing that keeps coming back is Pokemon. So although it's easy to write off Pokemon as just being in another Beanie Baby style bubble, Pikachu seems to always prevail. That's all I got for today. If you enjoy content on the Pokemon market or Pokemon investing, click subscribe. I try and put out videos fairly frequently. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching and stay safe out there.